Have you ever felt like a pawn in a game you didn't know was being played? 1 minute you're sipping champagne at the most exclusive gala in Manhattan, surrounded by diamonds and lies. The next, the room spins, the lights die, and you fade into darkness. But the terrifying part isn't the fainting. It's the waking up. Imagine opening your eyes in a stranger's bed, the scent of expensive bourbon and gunpowder in the air, looking up into the coldest, darkest eyes you've ever seen. And just as you try to scream, he leans in, brushes a thumb over your trembling lip and whispers a single word that changes your entire existence. Ours. This isn't a fairy tale. This is how Vivian Hart lost her freedom and found her destiny. This is the Corso contract. The rain over New York City wasn't cleaning the streets. It was just making the grime slicker. Inside the Vandermeer Art Gallery in Tribeca, however, the world was dry, temperature-controlled, and smelled faintly of lemon polish and old money. Vivian Hart adjusted the strap of her black dress, a vintage piece she'd found at a consignment shop in Brooklyn. It fit her curves well enough, but standing next to women dripping in Cartier and wearing custom Versace, she felt like what she was, an intruder. An art restorer, pretending to be a patron. "Stop fidgeting, Viv," whispered Chloe, her roommate, and the reason they were here. Chloe worked PR for the gallery and had sneaked them onto the guest list. "You look like you're waiting for a firing squad." "I feel like I am," Vivian murmured, taking a sip of lukewarm, sparkling water. "Do you know who these people are? That guy over there. That's Senator Holloway. And the woman laughing at his terrible joke is the heiress to the Grand Hotel fortune. I fix cracks in old oil paintings, Chloe. I don't belong here. You're here because the gallery owner, Mr. Sterling, wants to introduce you to a special client interested in restoration," Chloe said, scanning the room. "Big money. Life-changing money. Just smile and don't spill anything." Vivian sighed. She needed the money. Her father's business debts, a euphemism for gambling losses, were mounting again. Last week a brick had been thrown through their apartment window. No note. Just a brick. She needed a payday, and she needed it now. The atmosphere in the room shifted subtly. It wasn't a sound, but a vacuum. Conversations didn't stop, but they lowered in volume. Heads turned not with curiosity, but with a primal mix of fear and reverence. 3 men had entered from the private VIP elevator. They moved like sharks entering a koi pond. The 2 on the flanks were massive, wearing suits that struggled to contain their bulk, their eyes scanning the crowd for threats. But it was the man in the center who sucked the oxygen out of the room. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with hair the color of midnight, and a jawline that looked like it had been cut from granite. He wore a tuxedo, but on him it didn't look like formal wear. It looked like armor. He didn't look at anyone. He walked with a lazy, predatory grace, as if he owned the floorboards beneath his feet, and the air everyone else was breathing. "Oh my God," Chloe breathed, gripping Vivian's arm hard enough to bruise. "Who is that?" Vivian asked, unable to look away. "That," Chloe whispered, her voice trembling, "is Roman Corso." Vivian frowned. "The shipping magnate, shipping real estate construction, and everything else the NYPD can't prove," Chloe said. "They say the Corso family runs half the East Coast underworld. Don't stare." But Vivian was staring, and then, terrifyingly, Roman Corso stopped. He was halfway across the room, heading toward the gallery owner, but he halted mid-step. Slowly, deliberately, he turned his head. His eyes found hers. They weren't brown or blue. They were a piercing, stormy gray, devoid of warmth, but burning with an intensity that made Vivian's knees lock. It wasn't a casual glance. It was recognition. He didn't smile. He just stared at her unblinking for 5 agonizing seconds. Then he raised 2 fingers to his temple in a mock salute, turned and disappeared into the private viewing room. "Did you see that?" Chloe hissed. "He looked right at you. Do you know him?" "No," Vivian said, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "I've never seen him before in my life." "Well," her oily voice interrupted them. It was Mr. Sterling, the gallery owner, looking sweaty and nervous. "Mrs. Hart, excellent timing. The private client is ready to see you now." Vivian swallowed hard. Is it Mr. Corso?" Sterling wiped his forehead with a silk handkerchief. "Don't ask questions, Vivian. Just show him your portfolio. If he likes you, your financial troubles are over. If he doesn't, well, let's just hope he likes you." Vivian clutched her portfolio case, her palms sweating. "Okay, I can do this." She couldn't have been more wrong. The private viewing room was dimly lit, showcasing a single painting on the far wall, a 17th century depiction of Judith beheading Holofernes. It was violent, visceral, and beautiful. Roman Corso stood in front of it, his back to the door. He held a tumbler of amber liquid in one hand. The 2 massive guards were nowhere to be seen. "Mr. Sterling said you had an eye for detail," Roman said. His voice was a deep baritone, smooth like velvet wrapped around a razor blade. He didn't turn around. Vivian stepped forward, the heavy door clicking shut behind her. I specialize in Renaissance restoration, Mr. Corso. Though this piece, it doesn't need restoration. It's in pristine condition." Roman turned slowly. Up close, he was devastating. A scar ran through his left eyebrow, marring his perfect face, just enough to make him dangerous. "I didn't bring you here to look at the painting, Vivian," he said. He used her first name. "Not Ms. Hart." "Vivian, I don't understand," she stammered. Mr. Sterling said. "Sterling says what I pay him to say," Roman interrupted. He walked toward her. He didn't rush. Every step was calculated. He stopped 2 feet away, invading her personal space. She could smell him now, sandalwood, tobacco, and something metallic. "I brought you here to collect." Vivian stepped back, hitting the door. "Collect, I don't owe you anything." Roman took a sip of his drink, his grey eyes analyzing her face, dropping to her neck, then back to her eyes. "You don't. But your father does." The blood drained from Vivian's face. "My father. What did he do?" "Arthur Hart has a bad habit of betting on horses that don't win," Roman said calmly. 6 months ago, he borrowed $200,000 from a lender in Jersey. That lender answers to me. Arthur couldn't pay. I can work," Vivian said, her voice rising in panic. "I have this job. I can set up a payment plan. Please don't hurt him." Roman chuckled a dark, dry sound. 200,000 was the interest Tesoro treasure. The principal is much higher. And when Arthur realized he couldn't pay with money, he offered collateral. Vivian felt the room tilt. "Collateral? We don't have any assets. We rent our apartment. We don't own a car." Roman set the glass down on a side table. He didn't offer a thing. He offered a person. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. "No," Vivian whispered. "He wouldn't." "He signed the contract 3 months ago," Roman said, reaching into his tuxedo pocket. He pulled out a folded piece of paper and held it up. "Transfer of guardianship. In exchange for the clearance of all debts, present and future, Arthur Hart relinquishes all rights to his daughter, Vivian Hart." "That's illegal," Vivian shouted, tears stinging her eyes. "You can't own a person. This is insane. In my world, Roman said, stepping closer, looming over her. Contracts are binding. The law you know doesn't apply here. I'm leaving, Vivian said, fumbling for the door handle behind her. You can try, Roman said softly. Vivian turned the handle. Locked. She pounded on the wood. Help someone help me. The room is soundproof, Vivian. She spun around her back to the door chest, heaving. What do you want from me? Roman looked at her with an expression she couldn't place. It wasn't lust. It was something more possessive, like a dragon looking at gold. You'll see. Suddenly the heat in the room seemed to skyrocket. Vivian tugged at the collar of her dress, her vision blurred at the edges. Did you... She swayed. The water. Roman watched her, his expression unreadable. Sterling laced the sparkling water outside, a mild sedative, fast-acting. You bastard, she slurred. Her legs gave out. She expected to hit the hard floor. Instead, she was caught, strong arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her flush against a hard chest. Her head lolled back, resting against his shoulder. Her eyelids felt like lead weights. She fought to keep them open to fight him to run, but her body had betrayed her. Through the haze, she saw Roman looking down at her. He didn't look triumphant. He looked relieved. He brushed a strand of hair away from her sweaty forehead. Why? She whispered, the darkness closing in. He leaned down, his lips, brushing her ear, sending a shiver through her failing nervous system. Because you were never supposed to be his, Roman whispered. As the world faded to black, she heard one last word spoken with the weight of a life sentence. Ours. Consciousness returned to Vivian in waves, accompanied by the throbbing headache of a chemical hangover. She was lying on something impossibly soft. Silk. It felt like cool water against her skin. She kept her eyes closed, her mind racing. The gallery, the contract, Roman Corso, the water. She bolted upright, a gasp tearing from her throat. She wasn't in the gallery. She was in a room that was larger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the glittering skyline of Manhattan, but from a vantage point, so high the cars looked like ants. The penthouse. The room was decorated in stark, masculine tones, charcoal slate and mahogany. She was in a massive, king-sized bed with black silk sheets. She looked down at herself. Her vintage black dress was gone. She was wearing an oversized white dress shirt that smelled of him. You're awake. Vivian jerked her head toward the corner of the room. Roman was sitting in a leather armchair reading a newspaper. He had discarded his tuxedo jacket and tie. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and covered in intricate ink tattoos that looked tribal or perhaps ancient text. Where are my clothes? Vivian demanded, pulling the duvet up to her chin. What did you do to me? Your clothes are in the trash, Roman said, not looking up from the paper. They were cheap polyester. You developed a rash. I want to go home. This is your home now. Roman folded the paper and stood up. I am not your property, Roman, Vivian shouted. You can't just kidnap people. My roommate Chloe, she knows I was with you. She'll call the police. Roman walked to the side of the bed. He reached into his pocket and tossed a cell phone onto the mattress. It was her phone. Check your messages. Vivian grabbed the phone. There was a text from Chloe sent 2 hours ago. Chloe OMG Viv, Mr. Sterling, told me you and the mystery client hit it off, and you left for Paris on a private jet for a restoration job. So jealous. Text me when you land. Love You Vivian stared at the screen, her hands shaking. You spun a story. I control the narrative, Vivian. Nobody is looking for you because everyone thinks you're living a dream. Vivian threw the phone at him. He caught it effortlessly with one hand. Why? she cried, tears finally spilling over. Why me? There are 1,000,000 women in this city. Why go through all this for an art restorer with a gambling addict for a father? Roman sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress dipped under his weight. He was close enough that she could see the flecks of silver in his grey eyes. Do you know who your mother was? He asked quietly. Vivian blinked, thrown off by the question. She died when I was born. My father said she was a waitress. Roman laughed. It was a harsh sound. Arthur Hart is a liar as well as a coward. Your mother wasn't a waitress, Vivian. Her name was Isabella Vlachos. Vivian froze. Vlachos? That sounds Greek. It is. The Vlachos family runs the port authority in Athens. They are old allies of the Corso family. Roman reached out his hand, hovering over her face. She flinched, but he didn't strike her. He traced the line of her jaw with a callous thumb. 24 years ago there was a pact, a marriage alliance to unite the Vlachos and Corso families. Isabella was betrothed to my older brother, Luca. Vivian listened, mesmerized by the horror of it. What happened? She ran away, Roman said, his voice hardening. She fell in love with a charming American tourist, Arthur. She fled to New York, changed her name, and hid. My father and the Vlachos patriarch searched for her for years. By the time we found her, she was dead. Childbirth complications, and Arthur had disappeared into the cracks of the city with a baby girl. Roman's eyes locked onto hers. You are not just Arthur's daughter, Vivian. You are Isabella Vlachos's daughter. You are royalty in this life. And you were stolen. Vivian shook her head. So what you're returning me to Greece, to your allies? Roman's expression darkened. A terrifying shadow passed over his face. No, he growled. The Vlachos family blamed the Corsos for losing Isabella. The alliance was broken. They want you dead to erase the shame of your mother's betrayal. He leaned in close, his nose brushing hers. Arthur sold you to me to pay a debt, yes. But he also sold you because the Vlachos assassins are in New York. He knew he couldn't protect you anymore. Vivian's breath hitched. So, you're protecting me. I am claiming what was owed to my family, Roman whispered. My brother is dead. The contract passed to the next in line. Vivian's eyes widened as the realization hit her. The next in line. You were meant to be a Corso bride 24 years ago. Roman said, his voice dropping to that dangerous possessive whisper. I am not sending you away, Vivian. You are here to fulfill the contract. You expect me to marry you, she gasped. Eventually, Roman said, standing up and buttoning his cuffs. Until then you stay in this penthouse. You do not leave. You do not contact anyone. If you step foot outside this building, the Vlachos hit squad will put a bullet in your pretty head before you reach the curb. He walked to the door. Rest, tesoro. Tonight we dine. Wear the red dress in the closet. It cost more than your father's life. And if I refuse, Vivian challenged, pulling the sheet tighter. Roman stopped at the door. He looked back over his shoulder. Then I'll tie you to the chair and feed you myself. I prefer the compliant route, Vivian, but I am very adaptable. He walked out the heavy lock, engaging with a mechanical thud that echoed like a gavel. Vivian sat alone in the silence of the gilded cage. She looked at the view of the city she could no longer touch. She wasn't just a debtor. She was a target. And the monster in the next room was the only thing standing between her and a bullet. Ours, she whispered to herself, remembering his words before she fainted. He didn't mean he and she were a couple. He meant she belonged to the legacy. Vivian Hart was dead. The woman in the mirror was someone else now, and she had to figure out how to survive him. But as she remembered the heat of his hand on her jaw, a treacherous thought whispered in the back of her mind. Did she want to survive him? Or did she want to unravel him? 2 weeks bled into 3. Time in the penthouse was a strange, fluid thing. Vivian's life had shrunk to 5,000 square feet of luxury, yet the world felt bigger, more dangerous than ever before. She wasn't a prisoner in the traditional sense. She had access to a library filled with first editions, a chef who prepared whatever she craved, and a wardrobe that looked like it had been looted from Fifth Avenue. But the elevator required a biometric scan. Roman's handprint and the balcony doors were reinforced glass. She saw Roman only at dinner. It became a ritual. He would return from business, smelling of gunpowder ozone and expensive cologne, and they would sit at the long mahogany table. He didn't treat her like a captive. He treated her like a puzzle he was trying to solve. "The roast duck is excellent," Roman said one evening, cutting into the meat with surgical precision. "You haven't touched yours?" "I'm not hungry," Vivian said, staring at her wine glass. "I'm bored, Roman. I'm an art restorer. I work with my hands. Sitting here like a doll in a display case is driving me insane." Roman paused. He took a sip of his Barolo. "There is a room down the hall, north-facing. The light is consistent. And I had your equipment moved from your apartment. Solvents, brushes, easels, everything. And I acquired a damaged 19th century landscape by Cole. It has smoke damage. Fix it." Vivian looked up, surprised. You brought my studio here. I told you." Roman said, his eyes darkening. "This is your home. You need purpose. Without purpose, beauty fades." The next day, Vivian threw herself into the work. The north room smelled of turpentine and varnish, the sense of her freedom. It was the only time she felt like herself. But the peace was shattered 3 days later. She was working late, scrubbing a layer of soot from the canvas when the door opened. She expected Roman. Instead, a man she hadn't met walked in. He was younger than Roman, perhaps 25, with blonde hair and a smile that was too bright, too practiced. He wore a suit that was trendy rather than timeless. "So this is the hidden princess," the man said, leaning against the doorframe. "Roman has good taste, a bit intense, but good." Vivian wiped her hands on a rag, stepping back. "Who are you?" "Dominic Corso," he said, walking into the room and inspecting her work. "Roman's cousin. I run the casinos in Atlantic City. I heard he had a house guest. I didn't realize he was keeping a hostage." Vivian narrowed her eyes. "I'm not a hostage. I'm a guest." Dominic laughed. "Is that what he told you, sweetheart? There are guards in the lobby with machine guns. You're a prisoner." He lowered his voice, stepping closer. "And you should be scared. The Vlachos family isn't the only threat." "What do you mean?" Dominic looked over his shoulder, then back at her. "Roman is losing his grip. The war with the Greeks is costing us millions. The board, the other families, they aren't happy. They think you're a liability. If Roman doesn't hand you over to the Greeks to make peace, soon his own men might do it for him." Vivian felt a cold knot form in her stomach. "Roman said he would protect me." "Roman is obsessed," Dominic said dismissively. "He thinks he can fight the world. He can't." "Look, I don't agree with how he does business. I think women shouldn't be bargaining our chips." He slipped a card into her hand. It was blank, save for a sequence of numbers. "This is the code to the service elevator in the kitchen. It bypasses the security grid. It works between 3:00 a.m. and 3:15 a.m. when the system reboots." Vivian stared at the card. "Why are you helping me?" "Because if you stay, Roman dies trying to save you." Dominic said, his face twisting into a mask of concern. "And I don't want my cousin to die. Leave Vivian. Go to the police. Go into witness protection. Just get out of here before the Greeks burn this building down." He winked and slipped out of the room, leaving the scent of cheap vanilla cologne in the air. Vivian looked at the card. It was a key to freedom. Or a trap. That night, Roman came to her room. He didn't knock. He stood in the doorway watching her brush her hair. The tension between them had shifted over the weeks from fear to a strange magnetic pull. She hated him for taking her, but she felt safe only when he was near. "How is the painting?" he asked, his voice rough. "Coming along," she said, her heart pounding against the card hidden in her pocket. "Roman, are we safe here?" He walked over to her, taking the brush from her hand. He ran his fingers through her hair, his touch sending electric shocks down her spine. "As long as I breathe, you are safe," he vowed. He leaned down, kissing the top of her head. It was a tender gesture from a violent man. "Do not worry about the politics, Tesoro. Just paint." He left. Vivian looked at the door. "As long as I breathe. If Dominic was right, staying here would kill Roman." She made her choice. At 3:05 a.m., the penthouse was a tomb. The only sound was the hum of the HVAC system. Vivian crept through the darkened hallway, her shoes in her hand. She wore jeans and a dark hoodie she'd found in the back of the closet, an outlier in the sea of silk. She reached the kitchen. The stainless steel appliances gleamed like surgical tools in the moonlight. She found the service elevator panel concealed behind a pantry door. Her fingers trembled as she punched in the code Dominic had given her. 4491. A soft chime. The doors slid open. She stepped inside. The elevator descended rapidly, bypassing the lobby and going straight to the sub-basement garage. When the doors opened, the air was damp and smelled of gasoline. A black sedan was waiting, its engine idling. The window rolled down. It was Dominic. "Smart girl," he grinned. "Get in. I have a jet waiting at Teterboro. We'll get you to a safe house in Nevada." Vivian hesitated. Something felt off. Dominic's smile didn't reach his eyes, but the elevator doors had already closed behind her. She had no way back up. She opened the car door and slid into the passenger seat. "Thank you, Dominic." "Don't thank me yet," he said, peeling out of the garage. They didn't head toward New Jersey and the airport. They drove deeper into the city toward the meatpacking district. The streets were deserted, slick with rain. "Dominic, this isn't the way to the airport," Vivian said, gripping the door handle. "Change of plans," Dominic said, his voice losing its playful edge. "Airport is too watched. We're taking a boat." He pulled into an abandoned industrial lot near the Hudson River. The skeletal remains of a factory loomed over them. 3 SUVs were parked in a semicircle, their headlights cutting through the fog. Men with assault rifles stood by the cars. They weren't Corso men. They were speaking Greek. Vivian's blood ran cold. "Dominic, who are these people?" Dominic stopped the car and turned to her. The gun in his hand was pointed at her stomach. "Peace offering," he said coldly. "Roman is too stubborn. He won't give you up. So I'm doing it for the good of the family. The Vlachos Patriarch promised me the Corso territories in Queens if I handed you over." "You traitor!" Vivian screamed, lunging for the door. It was locked. "It's just business, Vivian," Dominic said. He unlocked the doors. "Get out. Slowly." Vivian stumbled out into the rain. A tall man with a silver beard stepped forward from the Greek group. This was Nicholas Vlachos, the brother of the woman who had birthed her. Her uncle. He looked at her with pure hatred. "You have her eyes," he spat. "The eyes of a traitor." "She's all yours, Nicholas," Dominic said, leaning against his car. Now about the territory. Kill him, Nicholas said calmly to his men. Dominic's eyes went wide. Wait, we had a deal. I don't make deals with rats who betray their own blood, Nicholas sneered. Gunfire erupted. Dominic scrambled behind his car, screaming. Vivian froze. She was in the middle of a war zone. She turned to run, but a heavy hand grabbed her hair. Nicholas yanked her back. You are going nowhere, abomination. You are going to bleed for your mother's sins. He raised a pistol to her temple. Vivian squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the end. Bang! The shot was deafening, but Vivian didn't fall. It was Nicholas who jerked backward, a red hole appearing in his shoulder. He dropped her howling in pain. Vivian scrambled on the wet asphalt, looking toward the entrance of the lot. A matte black sports car had smashed through the chain-link fence. It drifted sideways, screeching to a halt. The driver's door flew open. Roman Corso stepped out. He held a handgun in each hand. He didn't look like a businessman. He looked like the angel of death. Touch her again. Roman roared his voice. Thunder over the rain, and I will burn Athens to the ground. The rain had turned from a drizzle into a deluge, a curtain of icy water that blurred the lights of the distant Manhattan skyline. In the meatpacking district, the world felt abandoned, consisting only of rusted corrugated iron slick asphalt and the smell of the Hudson River, rotting wood and gasoline. Vivian sat frozen in the passenger seat of Dominic's sedan, her breath hitching in her throat. The realization that she had walked into a trap didn't hit her all at once. It seeped in, slowly cold and paralyzing like the damp air creeping through the car vents. "Get out!" Dominic ordered. Again his voice, devoid of the charming, playful lilt he had used back at the penthouse. He waved the gun impatiently. "Don't make me drag you, Vivian. I'd hate to bruise the merchandise before the handoff." "You're disgusting." Vivian spat her fingers, fumbling with the door handle. Her heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "Roman trusts you. He calls you family." "Roman is a relic," Dominic sneered, glancing at the rearview mirror as the headlights of the SUVs in front of them flared brighter. "He thinks honor pays the bills. It doesn't. Territory does. Alliances do. And right now the Vlachos family is offering a lot more than a pat on the back." Vivian pushed the door open and stepped out. The wind immediately whipped her hair across her face, blinding her for a second. The ground was a slurry of mud and oil sucking at her sneakers. She looked up. Standing in the semicircle of headlights were 6 men. They looked nothing like the polished security team at the Corso penthouse. These men were rougher-scarred, wearing heavy leather jackets soaked through by the storm. In the center stood an older man, with a silver beard and eyes that looked like chips of flint. He didn't look at Dominic. He looked solely at Vivian. It was a look of ancient, festering hatred. "Bring her," the man commanded. His voice was gravel, heavily accented. Dominic grabbed Vivian's upper arm, his fingers digging into her bicep hard enough to leave marks. He shoved her forward, causing her to stumble on the uneven pavement. "Here she is, Nicholas!" Dominic shouted, over the roar of the rain, adopting a swagger he clearly didn't feel. Vivian Hart, or as we should say, Vivian Vlachos, just as agreed. Nicholas Vlachos stepped forward. He ignored Dominic, completely stopping inches from Vivian. He reached out his hand, rough and calloused, and grabbed her chin, forcing her to look him in the eye. "You look exactly like her," Nicholas hissed. "Isabella, my sister. The whore who shamed our bloodline." Vivian tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. "I am nothing like you." She trembled, though she tried to inject venom into her voice. "And I'm not a Vlachos." "No," Nicholas agreed, his eyes narrowing. "You are a stain, a reminder of a contract broken. And stains must be scrubbed out." Okay, family reunion is over. Dominic interrupted, stepping between them with a nervous laugh. He held out his hand. The girl is yours. Now the title deed's for the Queen's territory. You said you had the papers. Nicholas finally looked at Dominic. The look was one of pure repulsion. You sell your own blood cousins, woman, Nicholas said quietly. You betray your own don. In Greece we have a special way of dealing with dogs who bite the hand that feeds them. Dominic's smile faltered. Hey, business is business, right? We had a deal. There is no deal with traitors, Nicholas signaled to his men. 2 of the Greek enforcers raised their assault rifles. Wait! Dominic shrieked, backing away, his hands raised. No, I gave you the girl I gave you. The gunfire was deafening. It wasn't a single shot, but a controlled burst. Dominic didn't even have time to scream. He scrambled backward, slipping on the wet asphalt, and dove behind the wheel well of his sedan. Just as bullets sparked off the hood, shattering the windshield. He was pinned, screaming in terror, useless and trapped. Vivian screamed, dropping to her knees and covering her head as the noise tore through the night. She expected the next bullet to be for her. Nicholas looked down at her, unholstering a silver pistol from his belt. The heavy rain washed over the gun, making it glisten. Stand up, he barked. Vivian couldn't move. Her legs felt like water. Nicholas grabbed her hair, yanking her to her feet with brutal force. She cried out, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. He spun her around, pressing the cold barrel of the gun against her temple. Look at the river, Nicholas whispered in her ear. It is the last thing your mother should have seen before she left Greece. It will be the last thing you see. Please. Vivian sobbed the fight draining out of her. I didn't do anything to you. Your existence is the insult. Nicholas cocked the hammer. The click echoed louder than the thunder rolling overhead. Vivian squeezed her eyes shut. She thought of the penthouse, the smell of sandalwood and tobacco, the way Roman had looked at her when she painted. I shouldn't have left, she thought, a jagged sob tearing through her chest. I should have stayed in the cage. A low mechanical growl began to vibrate through the ground. It wasn't thunder, it was an engine. The sound escalated rapidly, turning into a high-pitched scream of raw horsepower. Crash! The chain-link fence at the entrance of the industrial lot exploded inward. Metal shrieked as a matte black sports car, low, sleek, and terrifying, smashed through the barrier at 80 miles per hour. It didn't slow down. It fishtailed across the wet pavement, spraying mud and gravel, heading straight for the group of Greeks. Shoot the driver, Nicholas roared, releasing Vivian and shoving her to the ground so he could aim. The Greek enforcers turned their rifles toward the car, unleashing a hail of bullets. The windshield of the sports car spider-webbed, but the reinforced glass held. The car drifted sideways in a perfect controlled arc, the passenger door swinging open to act as a shield. The car screeched to a halt not 20 feet away. A figure emerged. It was Roman Corso. He didn't look like the man in the tuxedo from the gallery. He didn't look like the businessman in the penthouse. He looked like war incarnate. He wore a tactical vest over his dress shirt, which was soaked through instantly. In each hand, he held a heavy, customized handgun. He didn't hesitate. He didn't speak. He simply opened fire. The precision was terrifying. The first shot took the Greek nearest to Vivian in the throat. He dropped without a sound. The second shot shattered the knee of another man, sending him sprawling into the mud. "Vivian, get to me!" Roman's voice roared over the chaos, a sound of pure primal command that cut through her paralysis. Vivian scrambled on her hands and knees, mud soaking her jeans. The air was thick with the smell of cordite and ozone. Nicholas Vlachos, realizing his men were dropping, fired wildly in Roman's direction, then turned his gun back toward Vivian. "If I can't have her, no one does." Nicholas screamed. He fired. The bullet didn't hit her head. Vivian jerked her body instinctively, and the round tore a furrow across her upper arm. The pain was white-hot and immediate, like a branding iron searing her flesh. "Ah!" Vivian collapsed, clutching her arm. Blood welled up between her fingers, dark and hot against the cold rain. Roman saw her fall. If he had been dangerous before, he became a monster now. A roar of pure fury tore from his throat, a sound so raw it didn't sound human. Abandoning all cover, he marched forward into the open, ignoring the bullets whizzing past him. His eyes were locked on Nicholas. "You are a dead man," Roman bellowed. He fired with both hands, walking forward with a terrifying rhythmic cadence. Bang, bang, bang. Nicholas took a hit to the shoulder, spinning around. He dropped his gun, clutching the wound, his face twisting in shock. He scrambled toward the remaining SUV, his bravado shattered by the sight of the angel of death walking toward him through the rain. "Go drive, get us out of here," Nicholas screamed at his driver. The surviving Greeks didn't need to be told twice. They dragged their leader into the back seat of the armored SUV. Tires squealed, smoking against the wet pavement as they slammed the vehicle into reverse and sped toward the back exit of the lot, disappearing into the night. Roman didn't chase them. He didn't even watch them go. He holstered his weapons and sprinted the last 10 yards to where Vivian lay curled in the mud. He dropped to his knees, the impact splashing dirty water onto his expensive slacks. His hands, usually so steady, were shaking violently as he reached for her. "Vivian," he choked out. "Vivian, look at me." She opened her eyes. The pain in her arm was throbbing, making her vision swim, but she saw him. He was soaked, his hair plastered to his forehead, his face pale with terror. "You came," she whispered, her teeth chattering from shock. "I told you," Roman growled, ripping off his tactical vest, and then his shirt underneath. He pressed the ruined silk shirt against her bleeding arm. "I told you I would burn the city. Why did you leave me?" The anger in his voice was a thin veil over agonizing fear. He applied pressure to the wound, his jaw clenched so hard, a muscle feathered in his cheek. "Dominic!" Vivian gasped, wincing at the pressure. "He said, the Greeks would kill you if I stayed. He said you were too stubborn to give me up. I wanted to save you." Roman froze. The rain hammered down on them, washing the blood from his hands onto the pavement. He stared at her, stunned. "You thought you were saving me?" he asked, his voice cracking. "I couldn't let you die for a contract." She wept. "I couldn't." Roman let out a shuddering breath. He leaned down, resting his forehead against hers. He was burning up, radiating heat in the freezing storm. "It isn't a contract, Vivian," he whispered fiercely against her skin. "Not anymore. It hasn't been a contract since the moment I saw you in that gallery. You are my life. If you die, I am a corpse walking." He pulled back to look at her, his grey eyes storms of their own. "You don't run from me to save me. You stay with me. That is how you save me." "I'm sorry," she sobbed, clutching his bare shoulders. "I'm so sorry." "Boss!" The shout came from the darkness. 3 Corso vans had pulled up to the perimeter, securing the area. A group of Roman soldiers were dragging a miserable, sobbing figure from behind the sedan. It was Dominic. He was untouched by bullets, but he was covered in mud and shivering with fear. The soldier threw Dominic onto the ground a few feet away. Dominic looked up, seeing Roman, shirtless, covered in blood, cradling Vivian. "Roman, please," Dominic begged, crawling backward. "It was a mistake. I was trying to broker peace. I did it for the family." Roman didn't look at his cousin. He kept his eyes fixed on Vivian's face, brushing a wet strand of hair from her cheek. "Take him to the warehouse on 10th, Roman said. His voice was terrifyingly calm, flat and dead. "I will deal with him personally before the sun comes up." "Roman, we're blood." "You can't." Dominic screamed as two soldiers hauled him away, throwing him into the back of a van. The doors slammed shut, cutting off his pleas. Roman stood up, lifting Vivian effortlessly into his arms, as if she weighed nothing. She buried her face in his neck, the scent of gunpowder and rain overwhelming her senses. She felt the steady, powerful thud of his heart against her chest. "Where are we going?" she murmured, exhaustion finally overtaking the adrenaline. "Home," Roman said, walking toward his car. "And this time, Vivian, I am never letting you out of my sight. You are ours. Do you understand?" Vivian looked up at the sharp line of his jaw, the grim determination in his profile. She realized then that the cage wasn't made of gold or glass. It was made of his arms, and for the first time in her life, she didn't want to be free. "Yes," she whispered, closing her eyes, as he lowered her into the leather seat of the car. Ours. 3 days after the shootout at the docks, the silence in the penthouse was different. It wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of a prison anymore. It was the hush of a sanctuary. Vivian sat in the library, the bandage on her arm stark white against the dark mahogany of the desk. The rain had finally stopped leaving, the New York skyline scrubbed clean, glittering like a pile of diamonds spilled on black velvet. She wasn't painting. She was waiting. The double doors opened and Roman walked in. He looked exhausted, the shadows under his eyes testifying to 72 hours without sleep. He had been cleaning up the mess, scrubbing the streets of the remaining Greek threats, dealing with the fallout of Dominic's betrayal, and securing the borders of his empire. He carried 2 crystal tumblers of amber liquid and a thick manila folder. He set the whiskey down in front of her, but he held on to the folder for a moment, his knuckles white. "The Vlachos family has retreated to Athens," Roman said, his voice gravelly. "Nicholas survived the gunshot wound, but he won't survive the shame. The council has stripped him of his rank. You are safe, Vivian. The threat is gone." Vivian took the glass, the ice clinking softly. "And Dominic?" Roman's expression became a mask of stone. "Dominic is no longer a concern. We don't speak his name in this house." He placed the folder on the desk in front of her. It was stamped with an old, fading seal. "What is this?" Vivian asked. "The truth." Roman said, walking over to the window to look out at the city he ruled. "My investigators went through your father's personal effects after he passed in hospice 3 days ago. We found his journals, we found his medical records, and we found his plan." Vivian's heart skipped a beat. His plan. He was a gambling addict, Roman. He didn't have plans. He had debts. "Open it," Roman commanded, softly. Vivian flipped the cover. The first page wasn't a betting slip. It was a medical diagnosis dated 8 months ago. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Terminal. She gasped. He never told me. He knew he was dying," Roman said, his back still turned to her. "And he knew the moment he was in the ground, the Vlachos family would come for you. He knew he was the only thing hiding you from their view. He needed a successor. Someone who could protect you when he couldn't." Vivian turned the pages. There were notes, detailed, meticulous notes on the Corso crime family, on Roman, on his reputation, his code of honor, his strength. He didn't lose that money by accident, Vivian. Roman turned to face her, his eyes intense. Arthur Hart was known in the underground as the Ghost. He was a con man of the highest order. He never lost a dime he didn't intend to lose. He targeted me. Vivian felt the world tilt. He targeted you. He manufactured the debt, Roman explained, walking closer. He borrowed from my most aggressive sharks. He insulted me publicly. He did everything possible to force me into a corner where I had to take collateral. He knew that if I took you, I would be bound by the Corso law to protect what is mine. He manipulated a Mafia don into becoming his daughter's bodyguard. Vivian stared at the papers, tears blurring her vision. He sold me. To save me. Read the last page, Roman said. It was a handwritten letter, the handwriting shaky but legible, to my dearest Vivian. If you are reading this, I am gone. And if things went according to plan, you are safe in the house of the only man in this city dangerous enough to keep the wolves at bay. I know you hate me right now. I know you think I traded you for chips at a table. I had to become the villain of your story so you could survive to write the rest of it. Forgive an old sinner, Vivi. You were the best thing I ever stole from this world. Be happy. Be safe. Dad Vivian dropped the letter, a sob tearing from her throat. She covered her face with her hands, weeping for the father she thought she knew, and the father who had loved her enough to die, hated. Roman let her cry. He stood by her chair, his hand resting tentatively on her shoulder, a silent anchor in her storm. When her tears finally subsided, the room fell quiet again. Roman took a step back. The air in the room shifted. It became colder, more formal. The debt is paid, Roman said. The threat is neutralized. Arthur is dead. The contract is void. Vivian looked up, wiping her eyes. What are you saying? Roman reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small black device. He pressed a button. A soft beep echoed through the penthouse. That was the biometric lock on the elevator, he said. It's disabled. The guards in the lobby have been ordered to let you pass. There is a car waiting downstairs to take you anywhere you want to go. He pulled a slip of paper from the folder. And this is a bank transfer. $5 million. Seed money for your own gallery. In Paris, London, wherever you want. Vivian stood up slowly. You're kicking me out? I am setting you free, Roman corrected, his voice tight. You were kidnapped, Vivian. You were coerced. You stayed because you had to. Now, you don't have to. He looked at her, and for the first time, Vivian saw the cracks in the armor. She saw the terrifying loneliness of a man who sat on a throne of knives. He was letting her go because he loved her too much to keep her in a cage, even if he had built it to keep her safe. You can walk out that door, Roman said, gesturing to the library entrance. And you never have to look at this life or me ever again. Vivian looked at the door. It was wide open. Beyond it lay the elevator, the street, the world. She could have a normal life, a safe life, a life where people didn't discuss neutralizing threats over whiskey. She looked down at her hands, the hands of an artist. Then she looked at Roman. She saw the scar through his eyebrow. She remembered the way he had screamed her name in the rain. She remembered the way he had held her when she thought she was dying. She walked past him. Roman flinched, his jaw tightening as he prepared to watch her leave. He turned his head away, unable to watch her walk out of his life. Vivian walked to the double doors. She grabbed the heavy brass handles, and she slammed them shut. Clack! She turned the lock. Roman whipped his head around his eyes wide with shock. Vivian! She turned back to him, her eyes clear, her chin high. She walked across the room, closing the distance between them, until she was standing in his personal space, the space he had invaded, that first night in the gallery. I have a restoration project I haven't finished yet, she said softly. Vivian, Roman warned, his voice shaking. If you stay, there is no second chance. There is no other exit. This life, it is blood and darkness. I know, she said, reaching up to touch the scar on his brow. "But the thing about restoration, Roman, is that you don't just fix the cracks. You embrace them. You make the piece stronger than it was before." She traced the line of his jaw. "I don't want Paris," she whispered. "I don't want a gallery. I want the storm, as long as you are the one holding the umbrella." Roman looked at her as if she were a miracle he didn't believe in. "Are you sure? My father gave me to you to save my life," Vivian said, pulling his face down to hers. "But I'm giving myself to you because you make that life worth living." Roman let out a ragged breath, the restraint snapping. He wrapped his arms around her waist, lifting her off the ground, crushing her against him. It wasn't a gentle embrace. It was a desperate claiming. "Ours," he growled against her lips. "Ours," she promised back. As he carried her out of the library past the dossier of the ghost who had brought them together, Vivian Hart knew that the contract was finally fulfilled. She hadn't just survived the Mafia boss. She had captured him. And in this penthouse, high above the world amidst the shadows and the starlight, they would build a dynasty that no one would ever dare threaten again. And that is the story of Vivian and Roman. From a pawn sold into a golden cage to the queen who willingly locked the door from the inside. It's a twisted tale of love sacrifice and the lengths a father would go to protect his child, even if it meant breaking her heart to save her life. What would you have done if you were Vivian? Could you forgive a man who kidnapped you, even if he did it to save you? Or would you have taken that $5 million and run to Paris? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed the Corso contract and want more stories about dark romance betrayals and redemption, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next episode. Until next time, keep dreaming.